Hello, writers. Come write with me. My name is Michaela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my channel, Write with Michaela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Today is Friday, which is story time, or the day of our chapter exchange. If you're writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then send your chapter with written permission to writewithmichaela@gmail.com. I will post the email address at the end of the video and in the description below. I'm looking forward to reading your chapters. You know, it's winter time. It's the time to snuggle up with a nice, good story. So send me your chapters so that I can read them and I can get the joy of your story just as you get the joy of your own story and you get the joy of mine. So this is an exchange here. Now, of course, all chapters read on Fridays, whether they are mine or another writer's work, are copyright protected material. And no one may use any part in writing their own stories. This story is PG-13. So if you are under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. This story is in its rough draft stage, just as the last two stories we've read or heard. I read, you hear, whatever. The title of the story is Elloni's Pride, and today we are reading chapter 15 out of book 1. That is a mistake there. If you would like to read along, then make sure to send to the email I stated earlier, request a PDF of the chapter or the episode, and make sure you are specific. We are now in season 3.1, so kind of be so specific. If you want just the chapter, if you want the episode, then let me know. Now let's start. Elloni's Pride, book 1, Breaking Point. This is chapter 15, More Hope. Bradley and the boys had walked for several hours, and Coulter was starting to drag behind, so Bradley stopped. He asked Broman to find some more pieces of bark suitable to write some words on so they could have plenty, and then he decided to try to check on his village. First he had to think of the name of the person he had connected with in his village. After a few minutes of going through several names of people he knew, he thought he could just cast charms on others instead. But then suddenly he remembered Hector. So he thought to him, "Hector, this is Bradley. Where are you?" Hector looked around the dimly lit chamber. There were a few candles and oil lamps sprinkled around, but they kept the oil lamps barely lit, so the flame burned low. It didn't look like anyone had spoken to him, and he didn't remember Bradley being among them. He thought, "Bradley, where are you?" "We're in Jarson's home." "Well, the cellar to be precise. We thought the soldiers didn't like the rats, so we decided to brave them. And we found his tunnel went a long way away." "Where are you? Do you need us to let you in? How'd you get in my head? Are the dogs near? We've heard them a couple of times, but they haven't come down here yet. We barred the door, and Jarson had lots of stores that them rats didn't get. The fire either. The fire burned the top crates, but Jarson had water barrels in the middle of the pile, I think, because the fire stopped at a certain level, and everything below that was wet." "I'm not there," thought Bradley. "I've learned a couple of charms and cast one on you when I was trying to find a linker that Browser knew." "A linker? A charm? Do you mean you've hexed me?" Bradley chuckled a little. "A charm is not the same as a hex. The charm allows us to communicate. I was in communication with some of the people in King Fate-Right's kingdom, and they needed the words to a charm to help them make themselves invisible. So King Damontade's soldiers didn't see them. But, of course, the dogs weren't there. I will have to get another word from the witch for not smellable for you. But my pa, Hoshman, wanted me to check on the village and see who was left. Well, there's quite a few of us down here, thought Hector. Do you want a list? A list is fine. Or a number, thought Bradley. Did more people leave the village after the soldiers burned the houses? Well, in the morning there were about 5 families gone, including yours, and, well, the thoughts of the soldiers coming back and not finding you scared us. We thought the soldiers would just take our lives, so we went down in our cellars. But most of them are small and cramped. We found a couple of houses near yours with a chamber and all, but the smoke smell was dreadful. Jarson's has the smoke smell near the entrance, but it's not so bad in the chamber. How many of you are there? Well, more families left in the morning. They said they could get water from the pond, so they headed south. But I wanted to help Shireman get his wife's mother down to the cellar, and I have me pa, who is quite old, and 3 little children. My wife is in good shape to travel. I had thoughts to leave, but I couldn't go that far. Bradley thought to himself that the thoughts to leave might have actually been his thoughts, but he proceeded. I don't think you are safe there. King Fate-Right had all his people leave their kingdom. His soldiers aren't a match to King Damontate's, especially with no dragons among them. You need to leave too. No, I told you, whatever this is, I told you that we can't leave. Give us them words and we will practice. What about food? How many people did you say you had? Thought Bradley. We have 24 people, not counting me family, and I already told you that Jarson had a lot of stores. Okay, well, your family is how many? You said 3 little ones, but I thought you had 2 older boys, Trenton and Moloch. Yes, thought Hector. I have Trenton and Moloch and the 3 little ones, me wife and me pa. Bradley thought to him the words to the invisibility charm several times, and instructed him to tell the others that were old enough to speak the words. Then Bradley thought that he would think back after he got the word for not smellable. Soflin, this is Bradley. Broman had a wonderful idea, and that is for us to add the words to not be smellable. I know you added words to the charm that we use to protect from sight. You added and injury, so I thought you could tell me the words for smell. Soflin and Lydia came to the edge of the trees, and a meadow stretched out before them. Soflin lightly put her hand on Lydia's shoulder to indicate for her to wait. They didn't need to slide yet. Then Soflin sat down, and Lydia followed suit. Yes, Bradley, I believe we can add smell. My question is, why? The soldiers aren't going to find you by smell. Oh, the dogs. The dogs track you. I see. So if you want to walk through the woods, you won't leave your scent behind. Bradley looked in the direction they had come. He hadn't covered their trail and needed to do that. But covering the smell or eliminating the smell from the tracks sounded good to him. He glanced back and Broman was returning with a stack of bark pieces. Most were small, and Broman was concentrating on Coulter. So Bradley went back to the thoughts he was exchanging with Soflin. We still have people in the village. I'm not sure how many. The thoughts went like this. Well, in the morning there were about 5 families gone, including yours. Then the thoughts said, we have 24, not counting my family. So I asked about Hector's family, and there are 8. So that's 32 in Jarson's cellar. But who knows how many are in the other cellars. I can try to think of names and cast charms, but I think that makes my attention too far removed from my surroundings when I do that, and that isn't the safest for the linkers. Bradley, I didn't worry about the linkers I couldn't find. I found 3 and cast my charms. So the soldiers and their dogs didn't nose around too much in the linkers' homes. But I trusted the universe to handle the ones I didn't find. I couldn't be with Libya and Broman and Coulter. I actually didn't think Coulter needed to leave yet. Then, of course, Lydia is also a linker, so she needed me. My point is, the universe is life, and life finds a way. If you can't extend yourself that much, then don't. And don't worry about it. The universe will provide someone else. Look at Mersic. You gave him the words. What happened? He passed the words to everyone in the kingdom. I wouldn't have told him to pass the words, and I suspect that you didn't either. But Mersic passed them. The universe seized its opportunity. Now, if we had time to go into everything, I would tell you that someone, somewhere, planted a seed. And that seed sprouted. I was truly amazed at all the people who could repeat the words and turn invisible. And I know for sure Browser didn't have the strength to do the charm for all of them. But he didn't have to. Worry about it. Many did the charm. Many sent magic. I'm so excited that all these positives are happening. We've been without magic for a long time. But you can only repress people to a certain point, to their breaking point. When the people know that they will die if they do and die if they don't, then they are more willing to try. Unfortunately, we have reached that point. We reached the point where King Damantade killed children with and without the symbol. He killed innocent villagers. He killed crying babies, thought in Bradley. That last night in the village was so horrible. I never want to live through another day like that. Yet when I was leaving, I saw my pa and ma and my sister and brothers. How could I leave them? My pa told me, just go. And I knew that my staying wouldn't save his life. Jarson. Bradley stopped thinking words and just closed his eyes as the images passed through him. That night in the village was the breaking point for you, for your family, for Lydia, and for all the others that left. The ones that remain most likely have no hope to make it far, or to be able to live without the village. Now you tell me that they're in the cellars, so they have no hope to live there either. How long can they live in cellars? Yes, some cellars had food in them, but that will run out. We cannot save them all. We can only save the ones with us. Maybe we can send thoughts there, and maybe you can give them words to charms. But if they are too scared to come out... Soflin didn't finish the thoughts. There was no need to cast negative. King Damantade cast enough negative in the universe for all of them, 2 or 3 times over. Bradley, just do your part, and that's enough. Don't feel bad or worry about what you can't do. Now, the word for smell is olfaste. Thanks, thought Bradley. Thanks for all the words you've given me, especially the words of encouragement just now, because I was feeling a little overwhelmed. I think my pa was concerned, so I may just give him the words later to pass to those in the village. Soflin was alone with her thoughts, so she and Lydia got up and started their charm to slide. Soflin stopped Lydia just before they started. She pointed northwest. We're going northwest now, not north. Lydia nodded and finished the words to the charm to slide. She liked sliding. To her, it was a lot of fun. She didn't really think earlier that they didn't want to stay on the plains or in the meadow long, but Soflin knew that they didn't want to, especially with all the dragons flying around. Bradley became more aware of his surroundings. He watched Broman for a few minutes. Okay, Broman, let me see what you have. I can't make 'em that fast. I messed up 2 of them already, stated Broman. Bradley held out his hand. Let me see them all. We can change the messed up ones in a little into another letter. That's why I had you gather more pieces of bark. I figured we would mess up. We haven't practiced like your pa did. Broman handed them over. Bradley looked at them. B, C, D, E, G, E? I forgot about E. What are you calling an E? Asked Broman. Bradley held up the bark. Oh, the messed up F, stated Broman. I see what you mean now. My pa was good at this, but you're right. He had practiced a lot. It's taken me a while. He was drawing in the dirt, stated Coulter. Broman used his foot and wiped away his scratch marks, and Bradley was once again aware of the bark tied on his feet. Why did you wipe it away? Asked Bradley. That was smart to draw in the dirt first. The dirt is easy to erase and redo. The bark is not. Broman looked at Coulter. You're such a baby. You don't know anything. I'm not going to listen to you anymore. Whoa now, started Bradley. He is young, and we're not so low as to call names. And we will teach him. Once he learns quite a bit, he may have valuable insight, and we always need to listen to others. We may not always heed their advice, but we always listen. How'd you get so smart? Asked Broman. Well, I'm not so smart, so I ask for help from others when I don't know something, stated Bradley. I ask my pa a lot of things, and now I ask Soflin. He glanced at Coulter. I also think we shouldn't try to stuff all the letters in his mind at once. Give him the 5, and he can study as we walk. I'll carry your bundle, and you carry his. Then when we stop again, I'll try to cut the leather so the leather we have for some shoes for both of you. I will need to think with my father first, because there are people still left in our village. Did you get the word for smell? Asked Broman. Yes, I did. It is olfaste. Olfaste? Said Broman. Coulter scrunched his nose. That's a funny word. Olfste. Bradley shook his head. No, olfaste. And there's more emphasis on the fa, not the stay. Emphasis? Asked Coulter. That's a funny word, too. He laughed a little. Emphasis means... He looked at Broman. Well, you say words with a slight rhythm and loudness or softness. So fa is slightly louder than the rest of the word. My pa said stress, not emphasis, stated Broman. Maybe he understands that word. Then Broman said the word olfaste again, and Hagar started breathing out his nose strongly. What you do? Thought Hagar. He breathed strongly out his nose again, and smoke was coming out. I have a tree in my nose. Everyone looked at the dragon. There's not a tree in your nose, stated Bradley and Broman at the same time. Hagar breathed out again. That's all I smell. He breathed out again, and more smoke came out. So the others waved the smoke away from themselves, and they coughed a little. Bradley looked around and smelled the air. Yeah, I smell a strong tree smell here, too. Let's start walking and see if we can still smell it, and that way we can get out of the smoke that Hagar created. They started walking, and after they walked a little ways, Hagar breathed out one final time. I can breathe again, Hagar thought. You no say that word again. Me no like that word. Bradley chuckled to himself. At least you weren't breathing fire. Me think fire comes out mouth, not nose, thought Hagar. Bradley nodded to himself and thought it was good that the little dragon didn't breathe fire. He looked at Broman and could still see where the dragon had cut Broman's hair. He wondered how exactly the interaction between Broman and his dragon had happened to get the dragon to do that. King Fate-Right's people finally made it to their hiding place, and commanders gave out orders for the soldiers to organize the people into the different chambers so they could have a little organization. The soldiers showed the first families into the backmost chambers down the different tunnels, and then they filled in towards the front. Some chambers were much larger than others, so they held more families. A few chambers were large enough for 5 families, but most only 2, and some only 1. And of course, they didn't put the families in the chambers with the stores or in the frontmost chambers where they had already built stacked beds for the soldiers. King Fate-Right hadn't wanted to think things would be so bad, but he didn't trust King Damontate to keep his word, especially when his soldiers would declare that they were withholding taxes after they paid the same amount they had the previous time. Now, with them on the run and hiding, King Fate-Right started declining into depression. He tried not to let it show, but he had no hope to fight against King Damontate. How could he fight with no dragons? Then, after most of the people were in, he saw Browser briefly enter the chamber. Browser shook a commander's hand and then headed back out. The king quickly followed Browser outside. "Where are you going?" he asked. Browser was stroking his dragon's neck. He turned back and said, "I need to find Bradley and get him to a safe place. We can't lose him. I'll return when I can." "I'm glad you escaped," stated King Fate-Right. "I'm sorry. King Damontate thought I went to your kingdom," replied Browser. King Fate-Right waved his hand before him. "I thought we covered this topic. You couldn't have predicted King Damontate's reasoning? Are there more prisoners?" Browser shrugged. "I guess, because when I worked the mines there were more, but I didn't find them in the cells near my cell." King Fate-Right nodded as he thought, "Well, I guess we can't contemplate the prisoners yet. Once you get to Bradley, have him think with us again, and we'll have a conference. Have him include the witch and his father." What were their names? I think the witch was Soflin or something, but I don't remember the father's name, stated Browser. "Which direction are you heading?" asked the king. "I'm going south for now," stated Browser. "I'm not sure how to find Bradley, but I'm sure I will find him. I don't know how he got my name, but I know I need him." The king nodded his head. "My whole kingdom needed him." "Well, sir, I spoke with a Servic today, and I think we need him too. If he hadn't spoken all the old words he had to your people, then not so many would know the words or be able to remember all the words so easily." The king nodded his head again. "Yes, he reads the old text. Do you know if he brought the text with him? If not, then I may need to send someone back for them." "No need, sir," said Commander Smoson as he walked up. Smoson, yeah. "Since we were in the tunnels under the castle, we stopped and gathered the books. There were quite a few, but we found a cart, and Starvort and Matson are pulling the cart. It was hard to get the cart up the stairs, and at times it was hard to pull in the woods, but we all pitched in, even the servants and maids, and we managed to get it here. Needless to say, I'm very glad you want the text." "Yes, and by all means bring them to Servic. I'm going to talk to Servic about teaching, and then I need you to find paper makers. We're going to copy the text. My father believed in reading and writing, so we will learn again as a people, and somehow or another we are going to fight King Damontate and his dragons." King Fate-Right's spirit picked up a little. He felt a little better. Yes, they weren't in a good position, but they would do what they could. At this point, he didn't contemplate moving his people even farther away, but that idea was in the back of his mind. Browser said his goodbyes and headed south with Dronstein. He too was sad to see King Fate-Right's people hiding in caves, but he was glad they were alive and had prepared a place for themselves. The sun was going down, and Libya told the tailor she was tired and couldn't do any more lessons. She sat by a tree and relaxed. And it wasn't long before Keechan was hopping into her lap. Libya smiled and stroked the little mouse. She was so cute. After a few minutes, Elloni approached her and thought solely with her and the other two dragons. Your symbols shone twice today, but you only found one dragon. What about the other one? Libya looked up at Elloni and thought, the one I found was too close to King Damantade, and he needs help to get out. The tailors can shrink him like they did to Cremenia. I don't think the other one is in such a dangerous place. He will find his linker. I have a strong feeling his linker is my sister, but it doesn't make sense to me because he's not the one Lydia is going to try to ride tomorrow. Maybe that's why she falls, thought Ymbaldian. Lydia shook her head. No, something is wrong with the saddler. Or what did the tailors call it? A saddle? Yes, I think that's right. The saddle doesn't have straps or something. It falls with my sister. We will stop her from riding a strapless saddle, thought Elloni. We will find her, and you will show her your saddle, and we will convince her not to ride. I've been trying to locate her, but I lost her at the river. Then it seems she reappeared on a meadow or something. I remember my pa showing me pictures of a meadow, so I think that's where she is. I see her now, but she's moving fast. She's in another meadow, and I think she is north. But why would she go north? King Damantade is north. Felicity fluttered over. Elloni looked at her and included her in the thoughts. Do you have maps? Libya is trying to find her sister, and I want Libya to see a map. Baldian thought in. Yes, and show her where King Damantade's kingdom is, and if there is more north than his kingdom. Oh, certainly, thought Felicity. In no time, some tailors fluttered over with a map. They unrolled it, and the map grew bigger, like the book had done. Libya let Keechan down on the ground, and then she stood up and looked at the map in the fading light. One tailor lighted down on the map and thought, your village should be around here. Another lighted down in a different place and thought, King Damantade's kingdom is here. Elloni thought, so if you go from your village to King Damantade's kingdom, you're going mostly north. Now someone show her where we are. Another tailor landed on the map. Libya started paying attention to the different things drawn on the map, and Elloni thought, see, we are a little north of your village and west of King Damantade. You said Lydia was north. Maybe she is north of you and not north of your village. Libya got excited and pointed. That water! We flew over that water, and it didn't move like the river. I think my sister is north of that, which is not King Damantade's kingdom. But look at that blank part of the map. Would that be where the meadow is? That's just like the blank part where we are. Yes, that would be a meadow, thought Felicity. How far north do you think your sister is? Livia pointed, and a tailor fluttered down on the map. Lib slightly shook her head, and the tailor moved more north until Libya nodded her head yes. Felicity looked at the map, and looked at Elloni. That's a long flight, she thought. I don't know if you can do it in one trip. You may have to stop and rest. Maybe we should fly north tonight before we lose all the light, and then in the morning we could fly east, thought Elloni. Felicity studied the map. Well, and that makes the trip longer that way, but it keeps you far out of King Damantade's sight. So let's pack some food for Libya, and then you can go. Keechan thought to her, I'm not ready to fly yet, so I will see you when you get back. Libya acknowledged the mouse and then watched the tailors attach her saddle to Elloni. Just as Libya was mounting, she received, Wait, don't leave me. A tailor said you could make me smaller. Libya paused and looked back at first, and at first she didn't see anything. Then she saw Bitsy fluttering to her. Libya held out her hand for Bitsy to light down on. Keechin was in Bitsy's arms, and she looked big for Bitsy. But Bitsy had already shrunk her some. When Bitsy placed Keechin on Libya's palm, Keechin was the size of a pecan. Lydia giggled to herself. Then Bitsy fluttered up and hovered in the air above Libya's hand, and Keechin grew to her normal size. You have to shrink her, thought Bitsy. Do you remember how to do that? Libya thought for a moment, and then information opened for her in her mind. She nodded her head and thought, yes, I remember how. The tailors taught me that when I was... She paused and looked and turned to Elloni and then to Baldian. They didn't teach me that when I was facing a dead tree as an enemy, but that is how I'm thinking about it now. If I shrink an enemy to my size... Felicity fluttered in. Yes, you can do that, but never think that bigger is better. Bigger is not better for many, many things. When we find Soflin the witch, she can tell you. She packs her whole house in a bundle much smaller than your bundle. And she has books and a garden and lots more. But when she's reading or eating, then things are their correct size. And I emphasize this next part. And just because an enemy is bigger doesn't mean you can't beat him. Maybe you can't yet, because you just started training. But once you've trained, his or her size won't matter at all, and you won't need to waste energy or magic on shrinking him or her. It might be better to shrink his sword, thought Keechin. Libya immediately had a picture in her mind of a man as tall as her father holding the sword before him and swinging it, when suddenly the sword became very short, and it was comical, and she laughed a little. But then she saw the image she had seen in her vision, where the soldier's sword didn't shrink, and the soldier sliced her father's head off. Libya shuddered. I wasn't there for my father, she said aloud. Many tailors glanced around, as did Elloni and Baldian. Cremenia thought to Keechin, comfort her. Keechin scampered up Libya's arm and then rubbed her head against Libya's neck. Felicity fluttered in closer and gently put her small hand on Libya's arm. Libya, dear, you cannot change the past, and I don't believe that you weren't there for your father. Your father, your village, was living under the terrible rule of King Damantade, and your father died under that man's tyranny. We are here now, and we are working to put that right. And when we do, then your father wouldn't have died in vain. Libya nodded her head and then shrunk Keechin to the size of a pecan and slipped her into a pocket in her dress. She turned to Elloni and used the loop of the saddle to mount, as Bitsy and Hazar attached to Elloni's scales by changing their shapes. A tailor was fluttering near, and he thought, the loop is called a stirrup. Danter, she's had enough lessons for now, and she will let us know how wonderful every part of your saddle is when she returns. Speaking of which, you must have had a vision yourself to have that prepared on time. Ah, yes, I had a vision 2 summers ago, and because the saddle had to be the correct size, I couldn't work on it at home. Libya knew they would continue their conversation, so she indicated to Elloni that she was ready to go. Elloni spread her wings and easily lifted off. Baldian spread her wings and imitated Elloni. Before she too lifted up, a tailor fluttered in and attached herself to Baldian, and then Baldian flew behind Elloni. She wasn't as smooth as Elloni, and a few times she lost altitude, although she didn't know that word, and it scared her. But she kept going. The tailors looked to Cremenia. Cremenia was watching them, but she didn't attempt to fly on her own. Then the tailors that had borrowed things from King Damontade's kingdom were ready to return the things and look for Steinston now instead of in the morning. Elloni and Baldian flew straight north as planned, and the group of tailors going to King Damontade's flew and zipped fairly straight east. Both groups would fly until dark, and depending on the moonlight, they would continue a few more hours or they would stop. Soflin and Lydia slowed their sliding almost simultaneously, and then Soflin looked over to Lydia and realized they hadn't discussed slowing, but they had gone slower in the taller grasses. She smiled at Lydia, and they stopped sliding just as they came to the trees. You know, your age is very good because you learn from just observing or thinking through previous lessons. Lydia reached out her hand to Soflin's and said, "What do you mean?" "Well, I didn't tell you to slow down, but you did," stated Soflin as she took Lydia's hand. "Never lose that aspect of yourself. We should always be aware of things and learn. Now, we have a little light left, so let's continue. And I actually know a charm to make light without heat, so we can continue to your dragon. Is he sleeping?" Lydia closed her eyes and took in a deep breath. "Well, I see darkness, so he is sleeping or closing his eyes to get ready to sleep. Sometimes I close my eyes a long time to get ready to sleep, and sleep doesn't come. But I think I saw pictures a few minutes ago from him, so he's probably not asleep so fast." Soflin chuckled. "Well, he is a baby, so he might go to sleep faster than you do. When you get older and start thinking through things, sometimes it gets harder to quiet your mind to sleep. But we'll work on that for you so you don't lie awake so long." After they walked into the trees a little way, Soflin spotted a few limbs on the ground that were just right for the light charm. So she picked them up and taught Lydia, and they continued as if they had torches. After walking an hour or so, they found the cave, and they cautiously entered. The light from their torches cast light into the cave, and Frocques jerked his head up. He thought to Lydia, "I'm scared. Someone found me. Actually, I see two someones. Hey, I know two. Two is a number. I scared." "It's okay, little baby," said Lydia. She turned to Soflin. "He is scared, but he's seen us for the first time." "Are you my linker?" thought Frocques. Lydia set down her stick and let go of the charm. They went forward and reached out her hand. "I am Lydia, and we are connected." "I, Frocques. I, dragon." "Oh, this is wonderful," stated Soflin. "I got the thoughts too, so he is linked to both of us. I think we should sleep here, and we will decide which way to head in the morning." "I just got new information," thought Frocques. The information opened up like the pitcher playing ball. It said, "I fly my linker." Soflin smiled gently. "In the morning, perhaps. Right now, we all need to sleep. In the morning, I will teach Lydia a charm to make a saddle to ride you." "A saddle?" "A saddler," asked Lydia. "A saddle," stated Soflin. "If there is such a thing as a saddler, then that would be a person who puts the saddle on a horse or dragon, or a person who makes a saddle. And we don't have such a person, so we will use charms to get the jobs done." "Oh," said Lydia. She stroked her dragon some more, and then she threw her arms around his neck. "I'm so glad you were born, and I found you. I'm so happy to have my own dragon." Frocques tried to blow a breath in her hair to accept her sentiments and show his own. But when he did, a stream of dirt and small rocks came out of his mouth. Lydia jumped and spun around. Soflin smiled and shook her head. "There's a lot of learning to do. Frocques, you need to learn when to use your special breath and when not to." "I don't know that was going to happen. That never happened before," thought Frocques. "Lydia, just dust off or shake the dirt and pebbles off. We'll work on things in the morning," instructed Soflin. And Lydia did, and then they laid down for the night. Okay, writers, that is the end of chapter 15. I'm not sure why I labeled the chapter More Hope. I think that title needs to change. maybe something like Bark Chips, Old Books, and Finding a Baby Dragon would be a better title. I'll have to think about it. Leave a comment on what you would call this chapter. Also, leave a comment on if you would carve, if you could carve letters onto bark, and if you would scratch them in the dirt first. So that's carving is quite a bit harder than it looks, and I've tried some woodworking stuff before. And it's fun, but it's a lot harder. So leave a comment on if you can do that. Leave a comment on if you were King Fate Right. Would you be despairing? You just had to get all your people out of your kingdom. Your kingdom, you had houses and you had castles and you had barns and you had all kinds of things. But now you've had to leave to protect your life. So would you be despairing if you were King Fate Right? Leave a comment on if you were Lydia. What would you think when Frogheads breathed rocks and dirt in your hair? Fun stuff, fun stuff. Just imagine things and write them down or type them. And you are starting to create a story. Leave a comment on a scene in a story I've shared on the channel that you've really liked. Either from City of the Ancients, Tahia, or Elloni's Pride so far. Which scene did you like the best? It could be something that you didn't like. Maybe the spider mounds in City of the Ancients kind of freaked you out, and you're like, oh, that was a freaky chapter or a freaky scene. So something that has high emotion for you, like, or, freaking you out or whatever, then just leave that in there. Leave a comment about that. So I want to know what parts you enjoy and what kind of emotions there are. So join me Tuesday for some jargon. Join me Friday for chapter 16 of Elloni's Pride, book 1, Breaking Point. Visit my website, bymckella.com, and read some character bios. If you read some, then leave a comment on which ones you've read. I hope to start adding more bios to the website. I know I keep saying that, but hopefully I'll do that soon. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and the bell so we can continue to write together. And other people will have a higher chance of finding this video in this channel if you hit that like and subscribe. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share with them. This is Mckella with Write with Mckella. Bye for now.